What's up, Peacemakers, and welcome back to my channel for another deep dive into the wonderfully chaotic world of Peacemaker, where some think ducks and eagles look alike. If you just finished Peacemaker Season 2, Episode 2, titled "A Man is Only as Good as His Bird," and you want to discuss everything, well, you come to the right place. We're unpacking it all in today's breakdown, so toss yourself a beer and get your Pokemon ready, and let's break down this episode, full spoilers ahead. We kicked things off 8 months ago with a familiar face in a new leadership role in as Rick Flag Sr., the new director of Argus, as John Economos, ever the smooth operator, tries to make nice, hinting at old pal status, probably from their Creature Commando days. But Rick Flag Sr. isn't buying it, as he cuts straight to the chase. He wants the full, unredacted report on his son, Rick Flag Jr.'s death, remembering that Amanda Waller had kept that classified. Now, this to me sets the stage perfectly for what I would imagine is going to be a very important plot point for this season, and that being Rick Flag Sr.'s main objective in taking down Peacemaker. As Economos, visibly uncomfortable, tries to shield Peacemaker, blaming Waller's orders to the possible cause to what happened to his son. But the file speaks for itself in Flag's eyes as we flash back to the scene where Peacemaker killed Rick Flag Jr. in the Suicide Squad. For me, this scene was quick yet effective in establishing, for those who might have not seen the Suicide Squad or might not have seen the Creature Commando show, of what happened to Rick Flag Jr., and it did a great job of showing Rick Flag Sr.'s single-minded, burning desire for revenge. Now, early on in this season, I think the big question is, can the show make us, the audience, turn on Peacemaker, our hero from season 1, and rally behind Rick Flag Sr. in his quest for vengeance? It's a bold move, and I'm here for it, but I am curious to know if there will be a point in the season where we will be siding with Rick Flag Sr. Now, cutting back to present, Peacemaker is in full-blown existential crisis after killing his alternate self. We watch as he tries to hide the body, losing his cool, and doing what any smart person would do in a situation, and that's call Adrian, aka Vigilante, asking for his bone saws. We watch as Chris takes a shower, trying to wash off the blood from his body, which to me speaks a lot to what's going on with him mentally. He's literally trying to wash away the act of unaliving himself, even if it is another version of himself from another dimension. Think about it. He's been directly responsible for the deaths of Rick Flag Jr., his brother Keith, his father Agee, and now his alternate self. In his mind, he's a one-man death magnet and is clearly taking a toll on his mental state. Honestly, right now, my boy Chris needs therapy, not a dimension-hopping chamber. Meanwhile, Adebayo pays a visit to her current/ex-wife's apartment. Now, Key isn't thrilled about this unannounced visit, revealing a relationship misunderstanding, which is that she thought that they broke up, while Adebayo thought that they were just on a break. Look, I said this in my season 1 breakdown at points, and I said it last week, that Adebayo's relationship does nothing for me. I honestly don't even really understand why her semi-ex is even mad at her. In a world where Superman and metahumans exist, and you have a partner who's trying to do their best to keep the balance between good and evil, why wouldn't she be happy or proud of Adebayo's position? I don't know, maybe I'm biased because I'm an Adebayo fan and I'm taking her side, but I really don't know where her ex or her current wife is really coming from her point of view, besides just being, quite frankly, annoying. She knew who she was and who her mother was. Why would she be mad at her situation? And again, Adebayo literally saved the world from falling apart from the butterflies. So again, I'm not a fan of this particular plot line. I don't really know where it's going. Again, I am biased because I like Adebayo, but let me know if you all take the wife side, if you see where she's coming from. Let's talk about it in the comments below. Now, to backtrack a bit, it is in this conversation that I'm reminded that their home together is actually in Gotham. Which, speaking of, the more I think about it, it's kind of wild that Amanda Waller would be okay with her only child living in Gotham, which is arguably the worst place to live in the DC universe. Which actually makes me wonder if Adebayo had any personal run-ins with the Bat family, including Batman himself. Now, if you were like me, the Gotham connections have been piling up so far in the DC universe. If we go back to Creature Commandos, we actually went to Gotham at one point in the season. We saw the sign leading to Gotham City in Superman, and now we have 3 references in back-to-back episodes in Peacemaker. So again, I think it's just a matter of time before we go to Gotham, maybe in live action, and who's to say that we might not see a man dressed like a bat. But going back to the scene between the two, based on how Key was talking and she wouldn't say that she loved Adebayo back, them getting back together isn't looking like a possibility anytime soon. And again, I'm okay with that, because I believe Adebayo deserves better. Now, catching up with Harcourt, we see her patching herself up at a pharmacy after her bar fight in last week's episode. We see a kind lady seeing her bruises and tries to offer help, suspecting an abusive relationship. And honestly, she's not entirely wrong. Harcourt's self-destructive tendencies and inability to process emotions by, say, not getting to bar fights is an abusive relationship with herself. Now, Harcourt being Harcourt, she snaps at the woman by yelling at her, saying that she's not a mirror of the woman's past. This right here is another prime example of her pushing away anyone who tries to get close to her or offer any support. Now, you'll notice before leaving the pharmacy, Harcourt sees a help wanted sign in the door, and with no luck getting a job at any agencies right now, I wouldn't be surprised if she ends up taking this opportunity to get a job and get some money in her pocket. Now, still on watch outside of Chris's house, Economos is introduced to a new character this season by the name of Langston Fleury, an Argus agent who was sent by Bardot. Remembering last week that Flag makes sure that Peacemaker watch was top priority, and he wanted someone to keep tabs on Economos because of his relationship with Chris. Now, Langston is played by a legend, and that's Tim Meadows. I'm such a big fan of his work, and I love his dry sense of comedy at points because it is just such a perfect fit with James Gunn's style, as he immediately brings a new and fun dynamic, and honestly, he delivered some of my favorite moments of this entire episode. As we watch Fleury, who, by the way, has a bird blindness, and Economos, aka Ginger Cool as he calls him, have a bit of a back and forth, which again I found to be hilarious as they're trying to figure each other out and discuss the differences between ducks and eagles. Now, Adebayo doing Economos a favor from last week, she's checking in on Chris on the quantum unfolding chamber, which we learned for the first time in the show and in the DCU has access to 99 different universes and dimensions. Now, Adebayo being the good friend that she is, she senses Chris's tensions and fills him in on being monitored by Rick Flag Sr. and lets him know that he's in charge of Argus now, and Flag knows that he killed his son. Adebayo advises him not to use the chamber again and to willingly give it up to Argus, or else Argus will use it against him to send him back to prison. Now, my boy Adrian finally arrives, and hilariously, he's upset about missing out on the orgy last week at Chris's place. Now, despite Adebayo's warning, Chris takes Adrian into the chamber, which immediately triggers Argus's alerts. Now, Bardot orders Fleury to sweep Chris's house while they're celebrating John's return to Evergreen later that night, but she wants this information to not be shared with John. Now, back inside, Chris fills Adrian in on the whole doppelganger dilemma. As we get this very Quentin Tarantino Peacemaker-esque scene put together here, as Chris and Adrian are dismembering and burning the other Chris's body and using Adrian's tools to do so. Now, it could be wrong, but we all know that Adrian is a psychopath, and he was a little bit too happy when they were dismembering the other Chris's body, and I think he was having a good time, number one, because he's a psycho, but also, he's still upset about Chris not inviting him to that orgy. Now, we see that our Chris takes the alternate version's Chris cell phone, and later he spies on the phone and he finds a photo album of him and the alternate version of Harcourt looking like a perfectly happy couple, which sparks a dangerous thought for Chris, and that is, could he find this level of happiness in this other dimension? Meanwhile, we see the 11th Street kids are finally reunited on Harcourt's rooftop. It's a fun and happy moment for the characters being back together, as Chris declares nothing will keep them apart, which to me is a bit of foreshadowing because we as the audience know that each one of these characters are secretly hiding something from the other, which in my mind in return could actually break them apart. Now, I do want to touch on the conversation that we see between John and Adebayo and him being stressed out about his job. I hope at some point this season we learn more about why it is important for him to continue to work for Argus and what it means for him and why he can't quit his job. Now, Adebayo mentions that John should start his own business like she did, which makes me think I wouldn't be surprised if he is going to end up joining her business by the end of the season, and maybe she'll have her own agency with the entire 11th Street kids. Now, speaking of quitting, we see the other conversation on the rooftop between Chris and Harcourt as he's trying to ask her about her bruises in the bar fights, but we see that she denies him and being defensive about him suggesting that he sees a little bit of himself in her, as she refuses to believe that she's as miserable as the guy who fights crime in a costume. Now, this conversation not going as according to plan for Chris is just another example of him pushing himself closer to exploring this other reality where him and Harcourt are actually lovers. Now, back at Chris's house, Fleury's team enters and finds a quantum chamber door. But they made one fatal mistake, and that's messing with Eagley. Our favorite bald eagle attacks, taking down the team with ease, even taking out one of the agent's eyes. As Eagley's feeling himself and eventually retreats, leaving a bloody mess, but also making enemies with Argus agents. Now, sticking with Eagley, and after that attack, I am to assume that this is where frequent collaborator of James Gunn, Michael Rooker, comes into play, as he's going to be playing Red Street Wild. It's been said throughout the promotions leading up to the show that he is the world's foremost eagle hunter who is on a mission to kill Eagley. You'll also notice in the opening title sequence of the show that he's grouped with Team Argus, which again leads me to believe that they're going to hire him to kill Eagley. Now, as we come to an end of this episode, we yet again find Chris, who is drunk and yet again making a terrible decision. Now, after that uncomfortable conversation with Harcourt, he messages the other dimension's Harcourt from Chris's phone by simply saying hi. But of course, the message doesn't go through because, well, they're in another dimension. Now, remember, we learned in last week's episode that the alternate version of Chris had broke up with her, so they're probably not on talking terms right now. And yet again, against Adebayo's advice, we see Chris enters the quantum chamber yet again. As he re-enters the other dimension, he hears his alternate father and alternate brother looking for Chris, who they are assuming has gone missing. Now, something to keep an eye on moving forward is one of them mentioning that the alternate Chris may have been taking his pills again. Was he a drug addict? Did he have a pill-popping addiction? Only time will tell. As this episode closes with the alternate version of Harcourt messaging Chris back by simply saying hi, but with a broken heart emoji. As this looks like the perfect segue for our Chris to maybe fix that broken heart. Now, for me, this episode, similar to the premiere, was a okay solid episode, but I do like to classify this as a classic setup episode. We set up Rick Flag Sr. main objective in understanding his motives to taking down Peacemaker. We're continuing to set up Adebayo wanting to prove that she can make it on her own and start her own business and not have to be in the shadow of her mother. We have John being set up to pick a side. Will he choose his work with Argus or possibly the only friends he's ever had? We have Adrian, well, he's just Adrian trying to figure out how to get invited to the next orgy. We have Harcourt, who's being set up to confront and admit that she's lost and using destructive methods to hide her true pain. And of course, we have Chris, Peacemaker, who since season 1 has been setting up that he needs love. He never got love as a kid from his father. He's not getting the love that he wants from Harcourt, but now he has this other dimension where he can get the love from his father and Harcourt and kill two birds with one stone. Which brings me to this point. One of the biggest questions being set up this season is the classic saying, is the grass greener on the other side? Right now, Peacemaker is under the assumption that this other dimension is perfect. He has the love of his father. He has the love of his brother, who's also alive. He has this romantic relationship with Harcourt. But what if they're all just as bad, if not worse, than Peacemaker's own reality? Which actually brings me to my big theory for this week. Last week, Keith had mentioned that Chris had recently broke up with Harcourt and she's been dating a jarhead. I have a feeling that James Gunn wants to find a way to bring back Rick Flag Jr. into the picture, so what if Harcourt is currently dating Rick Flag Jr. from this other dimension? And to add a little bit more dip to that chip, what if Rick Flag Sr. in our dimension learns that his son is alive in this other dimension and he wants to make his way to that dimension to say his goodbye to his son? And he's going to need the help of Peacemaker to do so. But then if you think about this whole dilemma that I'm setting up, Peacemaker might have to kill or fight Rick Flag Jr. again because Harcourt's in love with him and she wants to be with Chris, but not knowing that's a Chris from another dimension. Again, this is all of a theory, but I think this could be something very interesting if this is being set up. And now that we're on this conversation of this other dimension, I just think that there's a good chance that we're going to be seeing heroes and villains from this dimension at some point. I'm sure we're going to see the alternate versions of our 11th Street kids. Maybe we'll see Adrian in this other dimension. Maybe he's not as weird or psychotic. We're going to probably see Adebayo. Maybe she's not as nice as we've known her to be. And maybe John is the head of Argus in this other dimension. But thinking of a bigger picture here, this is where I think we're going to eventually see that universe is not Justice Gang, but actually their version of the Justice League. And again, being in this other dimension just opens up so many possibilities for this new season. Which, by the way, I have a video on my YouTube channel discussing how I think Harley Quinn, Blue Beetle, and Bloodsport will be in this season as Peacemaker, so check out that video once you're done watching this. So before we wrap up this video, I do want to give out some MVPs for this episode. And again, this episode wasn't explosive, anything crazy didn't happen, and there was a lot of setup, but I do want to give the first MVP award to Eagley for holding down the fort and taking out Argus's men. But of course, I have to give the other award to Langston. The jokes this week, again, Tim Meadows, I'm a big fan. I thought all the stuff he was saying, from the whole joke about Adrian collecting all the Pokemon, the nicknames he was giving the Argus crew members, giving John the nickname of Cool Ginger. I mean, all the jokes were hitting on this episode. I'm really excited to learn more about him in the rest of the season. All right, so we have come to a close to this week's breakdown, where it is now your turn to let me know what you thought of this episode in the comments below. What were some of your favorite moments? What was the funniest joke? What were some Easter eggs or deeper meanings you all took away from this episode? What do you think about Rick Flag Sr., what he's going to do moving forward? What do you think about my theory about going to this other universe and the grass not being green on the other side? Maybe we will see some Justice League members at some point. Maybe we'll see Rick Flag Jr. at some point. Let me know your thoughts, your predictions, and everything about this episode in the comments below. And if you are still here at this point in this breakdown, watching this on YouTube, do me a favor, put in the comments right now, #Eagley. If you all enjoyed this week's breakdown, do me a favor, hit that like button, hit that share button, consider subscribing to my channel for more DCU and Peacemaker content. And if you're listening to this in podcast form, if you can follow the channel, give me a thumbs up, I would really appreciate it. Alrighty, y'all, until that next breakdown, you all stay cool, stay safe, stay as cool as a ginger, and I'll catch you all on the next video. Take care.